he's a member and a Air Force veteran, and he is now serving as the senior director for Drive Academy, which is a division of Seek Now. Great friend of ours. They have a SkillBridge program under their own belt as well, and we'll get into that and more and describing what that looks like. But Mark, first off, I kind of want to thank you for coming and sharing your story with us and our students here today, and kind of exploring kind of your walk from the Air Force, what you did afterwards, and it looks like from doing a little bit of snooping around your history, as it were, on LinkedIn, doing a little LinkedIn snooping. Um, it looks like you went basically from what you were doing in the Air Force, right? The operational excellence manager, the change management, Lean Six Sigma, that type of stuff, straight into kind of that same role on the outside, right? And how that transition. So tell us real quick. I mean, obviously, kind of introduce yourself, and then obviously tell us the journey that you went on from Air Force to Flex, and that first step out of the military, and how that transition went for you.
Yeah, Matt, thanks again for letting me be here. You did such a great kind of introduction there that I don't know if there's really much to add, but I guess I'll add a little bit of background in how long I've been in this transition journey. So I left the active duty Air Force I made the decision in 2014, but end of that year. So I started, as he referenced, Flex in January of 2015. I didn't retire from the Air Force because I went in the reserves until 2021. So I did 14 years of active duty service and left. That was quite the stress in itself. Why not just do those next 6 years? That was quite the stress in itself, in addition to the stress of transitioning and now having to understand what I don't know and learn quickly and not embarrass myself and so on. But this wasn't the first time I had started this journey. I had actually started in 2012. I felt like I had enough experience as a process improvement, Lean Six Sigma. I already had the black belt. I was like, man, I'm going to go into industry and kick butt. They're not going to know what hit them. And I went and I applied, and I wasn't getting the offers I wanted because I didn't have the bachelor's degree. And so I was in process. I finished it in 2013, but at that point I didn't have it. So I renewed my contract and then started again in 14 after I had my degree. And at that point, I was even working on the master's. So I think that was some of the lessons learned, was doing it twice. First time to see what I don't know. And that really helped to understand what skill gaps there were. In this case, it was an educational gap. But it helped me to understand. So now I could go close the loop. But what I also was able to do was get some real practice with the resume, with the application, with the interview, and so on. So it worked out kind of doing it twice. I went through TAP twice. And the second time I went through TAP, I saw how there was people who were doing this for the very first time, and they were going to be out on Monday, and they're just now learning how to write a resume. They're just now learning how to look for applications and what to do. And I was like, oh man, they're not ready. And so I've been in this journey, like I said, since 2015, because although my transition was successful, I now want to help other people have a successful transition. So I've been volunteering my time, doing all of this since 2015, helped find a employer resource group at Flex, which I'll talk about here in a minute, that was all about veteran transitions, and then Seek Now too. But I'll talk about those in a bit. To answer Matt's question, how is that transition from Air Force to, in this case, Flex, which is manufacturing? You guys may not have heard of Flex. I wouldn't be shocked, but they are a $24 billion company. And every device that you're probably looking at that's electronic, they most likely built. They are the second largest manufacturing company in the world. And they manufacture things on behalf of other companies. So, your phones, right? We all have heard about Apple, other people manufacturing Apple phones, same thing. So we would manufacture phones, monitors, vacuum cleaners. I mean, you name it, we manufactured it. What I did was I was in the solar industry. I went in and I was there to help with solar panel manufacturing. How that happened? Networking by accident. And I know they say networking is the key, and I don't want to deliver that as the end all be all message, because I don't want people to think that if I don't network, I won't be successful. So I'm going to talk to you about also how I got into Seek Now, which had nothing to do with networking, just to prove that it doesn't have to be that way, but it certainly is helpful. So, but how it happened with Flex, I was a Lean Six Sigma black belt. I was teaching a green belt class. Lieutenant Colonel '05 was in the class, and he was in a master's program with this vice president who owned the solar division, and they were having beers at graduation. And I was like, man, I'm running into so many problems with our manufacturing line. I have 30% defects. I mean, it's just killing me. I've hired person after person after person to solve it, and I don't know what to do. And the guy's like, man, I have a guy for you. And next thing I know, I get a call, and they said, hey, what do you know about solar? And I said, I know that 1 in 7 houses in my neighborhood have solar panels on them. It's like, what do you know about manufacturing? I said, just what I learned, and they offered me a job. And I came in completely blind to the industry, but very well knowledged in my skill set. And gosh, it was an amazing journey. Ended up taking that 30% defect rate down to 0.3% in 90 days, and truly solved that problem. And then that was just a career boost from there. So yeah, long story and I won't keep them all long, but long story to answer Matt's question on that transition. But I wanted to preface it with a little bit of the background as well.
No, I appreciate that, Mark. And obviously you said that you basically had two attempts, right, at transitioning out, before retirement. And what were the lessons that you did it first, and you kind of put the toe in the water and was like, well, it's kind of cold. What were the other lessons that you learned, like when you were first starting out, and when did you start saying, hey, at the 12-year mark, hey, I'm going to get out? Like, when did you start like going out, doing resumes, submitting applications? Because obviously you were still in and had enough time to say, you know what, this isn't right for me. Let me re-up and do this Air Force thing some more.
Yeah, so I did a 6-year enlistment at the beginning, and then I did another 6-year enlistment. And so when I was 12 years, it was time to enlist again. And at that point, I was like, well, they let you do TAP. And so I said, I'll do TAP. And not that I was really thinking about leaving, but I wanted to understand what the decision really was, if I stay or go. And I met Lori Norris, who I think you guys are going to talk to or have talked to. Uh, and she was a volunteer, and she helped me with resumes. I learned what I learned in TAP. And then every career fair, she would volunteer at the career fair and do resume reviews. And they had a career fair about once a quarter. And so every 3 months, I'd go in, I'd say, here's my resume, and she would redline it. And then 3 months later, I'd go in, here's my updated resume, and she would redline it. And I just went through this journey over and over and over again. And it was awesome. And then I started using those journeys or those lessons learned in the resumes from Lori, and was applying just nonstop and just to get that experience. And I remember it was the last time that said, you know what, I'm not gonna do this anymore. It was for Ross, the discount sales store. It was going to be in one of their, like distribution centers. And I was looking around the room, and I was like, man, I could fix this, and I could fix this, and I could fix this. And this would be awesome. And we sat down, and he offered me a salary that was just like, whoa. I mean, that was nowhere near where I was trying to be. And so, and this again is 2012, but I guess I'll be transparent. It was 60,000 a year, and it was nowhere near where I wanted to be. And I felt I was more qualified for something else. And that's when he hit me. It's the degree. If you would have had a degree, maybe I could put you at maybe a more senior manager, maybe 85 to 90. And that wasn't where I wanted to be either. So yeah, I was like, all right, I'm going to go get the bachelor's. I'm going to finish that up. And then I'm going to go get the master's, so I could truly go after the salary range I wanted to be at. It just so happened that Flex came knocking on the door to say, hey, if you can solve this problem, we've got quite the gig for you. And it really was. I traveled the world, going to manufacturing sites all over the world, just constantly doing process improvement and quality management. Probably one of the best jobs I ever had until this one. And it was just a great experience.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, because I'm gonna pivot real quick because you mentioned Lori Norris.
Yeah.
She actually teaches our myths about resume building. She actually is on tomorrow in Foundations and is with us. So she agreed to come in and teach resumes during our Foundations course. So if anybody needs help with resumes, feel free. And we've said it before. You guys can pop back over to Foundations and she comes on tomorrow afternoon, last hour and a half from 14:30, 2:30 Eastern to 4. So if you guys are curious about resume writing, jump on that and get her knowledge and pick her brain about that. But no, I appreciate that. That was a great segue into getting people over there to resumes. But so obviously now that, when you got into Flex with that degree, you actually walked into a senior quality process management role. So you got basically what you were looking for originally. Now you had the degree, right? And you spent about what, 7 years, close to 7 years with Flex?
Yeah, it was quite amount of time, and the journey was quick. Like I said, I started at a manager role, and then when I had that big success in the first 3 months, they made me senior manager right away. And then it was a year that I became director. I mean, I was moving quick through the ranks, and it's not like that in industry. Uh, I just think that they realized the value I was able to bring, but they had to start me at a certain level. But then once I was able to demonstrate, I was able to move quickly. So yeah, that's how that worked.
Do you think a lot of that um your quick like upward mobility through the ranks and manager, senior manager, and then director, what portion of that kind of played into your experience and your expertise from the military?
Honestly, it's interesting. So that vice president, who at that point now was a senior vice president and owned Olive Energy, and at that point I was now director for Olive Energy, and he was prior service. He was a nuke sub officer, and so he kind of understood where people came from, and a lot of people on his team were prior service. But he was also the kind of person that he hires the right person for the job, not just because you're prior service. And he fires fast. That was something he told me a long time ago too. So he knew what I was already bringing to the table, and I kind of knew what I was bringing to the table. But man, it was a weird journey. I remember day one, I'm working with his executive assistant, and I'm reading the travel policy and expense policies because it's not per diem, right? And one of the lines in there was the senior person pays for the dinner if a group of people are out to dinner. And I turned to her and I asked her, and I was like, how do I know who's senior? We're not wearing ranks. Like, how do I know who's senior? And I didn't know at that point, how manager and senior manager and director and senior director, I didn't know any of that stuff. And she looked at me and said, Mark, uh, unless you're taking me out to dinner, you're never paying. And that's how junior I was. And I was like, okay. And then eventually I kind of learned how it went. But with Scott, his name was Scott, the senior vice president, I brought this mission mindset to what I was doing. And so I would deliver, right? Somebody was like, man, it would be great if we could do this. It would be great if we could solve this problem. It'd be great, it'd be great, it'd be great. And I would go to the point I was killing myself. And it was after his staff meeting, and he looked at me and he said, Mark, you're awesome, but you're doing it all wrong. And he said, you need to pick the vital few things and go after it, and then leave the rest alone. And I was like, how do you do that? How do I determine what the top three is? I was think that's something that you would tell me as the boss. And he said, no, you're the one, boots on the ground, in the thick of it. You tell me what the most important things are, and then you tell me why you can't do the rest. And then I got your back from there. I still struggle with that today. Even though that lesson's right there in my face, I still struggle with that today. I have a boss who will be like, man, we need to do this. And I stop everything I'm doing. I turn around and I start working on that because the boss just essentially sent me an email, and now I have a mission. And if I would just be like, hey, no, if I do this, this isn't going to happen, it'd be different. And I've gotten better with it, but I'm telling you, we talk about what we bring, that's value add. And I kind of pivoted it away, Matt, but there's also things that we bring that we have to get over. And Matt, I loved how you was like, hey, tomorrow at 14:30, and then you stopped me. He's like, at 2:30, right? Because you're already starting this transition of building the terminologies that we're going to be using out there. And that's key. So yeah, we bring a lot of great things, but we have a lot to learn.
Oh, 100%. I think, yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm fresh out the gate, right? And there's obviously a whole class here that's getting ready to be out the gate very soon. And the civilian world's completely different ballgame, right? Something that we're not totally indoctrinated into, obviously, as the military, however long we have served, whether it be 4 years or 20 plus years, right? That indoctrination is something, is kind of an Achilles heel, oftentimes, on how to bridge that gap, because there's a learning curve, right? Whether it be the culture, whether it be just the language that's used. Um, did you have any issues with that when you were first getting out, like the language barrier, basically the quote unquote language barrier from military to civilian? Because again, you
Yeah.
walked in from a place where you were doing change management and stuff like that into kind of a similar role. But how was that? Was there a disconnect in your early part of that transition?
Oh gosh, yeah. One of the funniest stories. So we were at one of our manufacturing sites in Mexico, and we were being audited by our customer who we manufactured this material for. And it's normal to go through that audit process. So it was all hands on deck. The account manager of the account was there. Her boss, which was also my boss, was there. I was there along with one of my direct reports, who, because now as a director, so now he's more the tactical person, was there, and we were all hands on deck. The audit happens. We go back to the hotel. We're kind of talking about things that happened. And by this point, now my direct reports come back because he had to stay late to learn what he needed to learn. And then he came and spoke to us. And I told him, I said, hey guys, I'm going to go do a hot wash with Jake over here and I'll be back. And they looked at me and they was like, what are you going to go do to Jake? And I was like, hot wash, and it's like, you're going to wash Jake? And I didn't know that they didn't understand. And I didn't understand. I was like, okay, if it's not hot wash, what is the term? Because I don't think it's debrief. I don't think you guys would know debrief. That's an Air Force term. And I was like, no, Mark, debrief is the term we use. And I was like, oh, dang. I mean, I was really stumbling with words sometimes. And it was funny and it could be embarrassing. But yeah, you stumble through the words.
There's a number of individuals in this class right now that are in the, maybe they have a background in Lean Six Sigma or logistics management or change management. If you were to speak to them directly, because I know there's a number of them that's doing that right now or looking for those opportunities right now, what's one thing, that a piece of advice, if they're looking to get back into the kind of the same similar roles that they were serving in the military, what would be one piece of advice that you'd give directly to those that are looking for those opportunities?
Yeah, it takes more than the education, is the biggest thing. Being able to demonstrate, uh, through accomplishment examples, even if you have to go force it yourself. When I first got my green belt, I came back to my organization and they had a rule that you couldn't facilitate process improvement within your own organization. It was a dumb rule. But I ended up telling the commanders, like, look, I just PCS'd here, right? I don't really know anyone. This is kind of new for me. So I am an outsider. And he's like, okay, that logic makes sense, and allowed me to facilitate process improvement within the organization. And that helped. And then that sped things up, and I got my black belt. And then now I have all of these initiatives I could put on my resume that said, not only do I have the education, but here's example of time, money, effort saved. And that's extremely helpful. And so now, me as a black belt, if I'm looking for someone who's going to come be a green belt or any kind of certification like Lean Six Sigma or project management or anything within the organization, I'm looking at the experience. Yes, I want you to have maybe a PMP, but honestly, I care more about the experience than I care about the PMP. When it comes to Lean Six Sigma, I think the certifications are very important. And so, yes, I want to see that, but I know that there's organizations that will certify with no experience. So what I say is go build the experience, even if you do it in your own house, right? You no one has to really kind of understand, but you have identified a shortfall in the budget. So you evaluated the process and then boom, 20% savings increase, right? Uh, got to build the experience. And I'm not trying to say, um, pencil whip it by, an example I just gave. I'm saying just get the real experience and use the tools, and that will be helpful.
No, that's fantastic. Now, I mean, now, so you moved on from Flex, did almost 7 years with them, and then you went into Seek Now. I want to talk about that opportunity. One is your perspective as you've gone from director, now senior director at Seek Now, and with the Drive Academy. But how is, one, how did you find that position from Flex to Seek Now? How did that come about? And then, because you went from basically director of customer experience over at Flex, right, to the director of operational excellence, kind of similar to what kind of were serving at Flex at one point in time. How did you find that role with Seek Now, and what are you doing now at Seek Now that's really kind of paving the way for a lot of our service members to take advantage of their skill sets, um, outside of the military?
Yeah, Matt. So that's where I started when I said, hey, networking helped me transition, but it doesn't have to be the end all be all. Funny enough, how I found Seek Now was not me finding it. It was my boss at Flex who sent me the link. And he's like, hey, Mark, there's this opening in Louisville, Kentucky that you seem perfect for. You should consider it. And I don't know if he was trying to save me because there was going to be some sort of riff or something that was coming through. I have no idea what his motivations were, but I do know a couple of months later, he left the company. And so I think he was just maybe protecting me, like, hey, you're going to lose your top cover, so let's make sure you're grounded. And maybe that's why he did it. But he sent it to me, and he was absolutely right. Here was this thing that exactly what they were looking for was my exact experience, and it's in my hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. It's like, wow, I didn't think that would be possible. And so I applied, and yeah, I ended up with an interview. And again, this was all cold. I knew no one at this organization. There was nothing that helped me get my foot in the door. And so it was cold interviews, but I felt like I always done pretty well with the interviews. And obviously I must have if I was able to get in. And yeah, so it was a pretty awesome experience. And then when I came in, it was much of the same. It was like, hey, run quality and run operations excellence and teach us process improvement and all these things. And so we did that. And then one day I was having lunch with our recruiter team, and they knew I was prior service. And so they wanted to talk to me about that. And they was like, hey, Mark, did you know 33% of our inspector workforce is prior service veterans? I was like, man, that's an awesome number. That's so great. I'm glad that 33% are. It's like, we love veterans so much. We want more. But because I had been in this journey of helping people transition, I knew a lot of the stats. I knew that a third of people are underemployed when they leave service. That 2/3 will have like 2 or 3 jobs within the first 3 years, right? That there was a lot of these really humbling stats about people who are transitioning. And I told them, I said, hey, you can't just raise your hand and say, we want veterans. It doesn't work that way. One, they don't know who you are. No one's ever heard of Seek Now, just like no one ever heard of Flex. But we were number one in our industry at Flex, and we're number one in our industry at Seek Now. But we're business to business organization, so you don't hear of us because you don't order anything from us. But we're a leader, so you can't just raise your hand. You can't just show up to the career fair with a Seek Now shirt and think people are going to stop and see what you have to offer. They're going to stop at the Amazon table and the Lockheed Martin table and the companies that they've heard of. And they found that really interesting. And they told me about how they had spent a lot of money with organizations like Recruit Military to try and get past this opportunity to grow more veterans. And I told them, no, I mean, that's not going to work either. That you have to be able to speak their language, and you have to go where they are. And so a VP heard that as we were talking, and he's like, Mark, it sounds like you know what to do. Why don't you build it? And so he put me in front of the CEO, and I told the CEO, if you really want this, this is what my recommendations are. And then the CEO said, fine, go do it. So he gave me a budget, and actually I built the budget myself, but I said, hey, here's the budget and so on. And he said, great. And so I went to my very first career fair with no tablecloth, nothing. I had no anything. All I had was a story. I went there with 2 other people so they could kind of see it in action. And all we were was a table outside of a tap. So as people left tap for breaks or whatever, they may walk past our table. But there was 3 other vendors there too. I wasn't trying to compete. I was just trying to tell stories. And we ended up having 7 people request information, even though we had no banners, no tablecloth, no flyers, request information. 3 of them onboarded with us.
Wow.
And that was their proof to say, yeah, Mark knows what he's doing. Now let's go build it. Let's go fund it. And so we created a company called Drive Academy. And Drive Academy is an acronym. It stands for Development, Resources, Innovation, and Virtual Education. But it was really designed to be able to do 2 verticals that I now own. One is learning and development for insurance adjusters who are in our industry so they can get continuing education credits. And the other is our military operations, where we help service members as they're transitioning through SkillBridge into our industry, giving them all the learning, the certification, and with us, a guaranteed offer at the end. And that was what I had pitched to them was, if you are going to do this, then you need the SkillBridge. It needs to have a guaranteed offer, and it needs to be 0 out-of-pocket expense. And so with that low risk, high reward, and well paying, because our people on average make about 118,000 a year, I felt you could solve that without that name brand, without being Amazon, without being Lockheed Martin, and so on. And we've been pretty successful. We've had about 120 people has come through or will come through this year. We had about 50 in our first year out there. And I was talking to other organizations who were kind of similar to me, and it was like, my gosh, we would love to have those kinds of numbers. And so it's just being able to understand that, right? They have a VP who's never served building their program, but it takes somebody who's served, I think, who understands the language and the translation and meets you where you are. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm meeting you where you are.
Yeah, no, that's like I said, I think the first time, and I've told this story probably a couple times, some people may have heard it before, but the first time we spoke, I was like, this is freaking awesome. Like if you had come and spoke to me before I came on board with Seven Eagle, I would have been joined up already. Like, so what type of, obviously your roles that you have with Seek Now and through the Drive Academy is really open to a lot of folks, a lot of different backgrounds, right? But what's one thing that makes those people that go through the academy that to go on to do and work for Seek Now successful?
I think it's recognizing 2 things. One is that you're transitioning and you're opening yourself to the things that you don't know. You're not just going to go get the cyber credential or the PMP because everyone told you get those credentials and you'll make 6 figures. You're willing to be able to open and listen to what opportunities are out there. One of the first people who onboarded with us was a chaplain, an 04 chaplain. And it was because it's like, man, I don't want to work with anybody else. I've done it, right? I now just want to go out on my own, go inspect these properties for you, not have anybody to report to, not have somebody who's going to look over my shoulder, not have to clock in or clock out, and just let the outdoors be my office and just do my job and do it well. And yeah, and he did that. You know, I've had others. I had this young Marine. He was a E4, I think, when he left, and he came in. I mean, just rock star. He came in. It's like, I want to learn, and he spent all the time learning. And then it was time for him to start running jobs independently. And then he did so awesome that when he onboarded, got his sign-on bonus and everything else, I mean, just did his work. The very first thing he did was, I want to go somewhere where there's a lot more jobs than where I am right now. So he deployed to Chicago, where there was a big storm that had come through. And he was running 6 to 10 jobs a day, not because he wanted the money, which he was getting paid well money for doing that, but because he wanted to master this new craft in his transition. Within his first 6 months, he's already become a mentor in our organization. A mentor is the people who do the on-the-job training, that one-on-one on-the-job training for our interns. He's a mentor. And so he coaches people and helps and guides them along until they're ready to run jobs themselves. So yeah, we've had people from all walks of life, all different MOSs or AFSCs, whatever you want to call them, all different ranks from, E3 to O5. Who have come in here and realized that, yeah, I think I would be happy being outdoors. I think I'd be happy being independent. I think I'd be happy inspecting and all that. I'm not scared of being on a roof, and I like making a lot of money. So yeah, I think this is the skill bridge for me. And yeah, that's what I see.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that from feedback I've heard of folks looking to get into Seek now. That's one thing that is a big hurdle, right? Because if you're scared of heights,
Yep.
that could be a kind of a down check on
Yeah.
on pursuing a career with Seek now. I love what you guys do too, because with the no out of pocket expenses, you fly folks into Louisville to get trained, right?
Yeah, their first week, we fly them into Louisville. They get a classroom kind of academics. I have an instructor who's been doing this since 1998, being in the roofing industry. And he was an inspector with us for many years. And he was one of those mentors who would teach and coach people along. And so I plucked him and I was like, hey, man, come teach in this program for me. And so once a month, we have a cohort start. He teaches them the whole week. Day one, they're already pulling out a ladder and climbing up to the roof of our very tall building. It takes a 32-foot ladder to get to the top, and they're climbing up there. And then by day four, they're getting on my boss's house, inspecting his roof and all that, and doing it just as if you would do it out in the field. So a lot of classroom academics learn terminology, methodology, but yeah, we fly them, we put them in a hotel, we provide a rental car. A lot of the meals are covered, even though they're not supposed to be. But like, we'll buy breakfast because we're so happy you're there day one. We throw a party for them on Wednesday or Thursday with the entire executive and management team. It's really a great time for the people to come in. And I think what they then see is how closely aligned our culture is to that service culture, where it's everyone just supporting and taking care of each other, no person left behind, and all of that in order to be able to, and then and have the mission that we have, where we're going out. And when we're conducting inspections, it's because something bad just happened. A storm came through, a tornado, a hurricane. And this is not only somebody's most important investment, it's also the thing that keeps them safe. And so we're one of the first responders that they'll see to identify what the damages are so their insurance can adjudicate the claim so much quicker. And so we have a real mission in our communities, and we have a real mission with each other. And we call it this Team Green and Mojo that we have. And it's just phenomenal, the comparison between service and us.
Wow. Yeah, I think someone just made a comment down there talking about you guys must have. They said Chuck said it does sound like you guys have a great culture at the ag organization, and
Yeah,
it
yeah, I love it.
wow. No, I love your guys' mission and the passion you guys show for what you guys do and the training. So how does if someone was to get connected with you and they want to pursue this kind of path, how does one get started?
Yeah, I think the first thing is you got to send me a note or something, let me know you're interested. So I just put my LinkedIn in the chat. By all means, you can connect with me, send me a message. I'll put my phone number in there and my email as well. I just didn't want to type and be distracted, so I'll add that towards the end. And you can reach out, you can send me a text, you can call, you can email. And what I do is I immediately connect you with one of my recruiters. So not only do I run learning and development and military operations, but I also run talent acquisitions. So I'll immediately connect you with one of my recruiters so they can speed this process through. They'll talk to you about the program. They'll answer all of your questions. They'll do some pre-qualifications with you. But the whole thing is they understand, because I've taught them, that this is a scary moment. It's a challenging moment. And we want to be as upfront and honest and supportive as we can be. We're not going to be, the recruiter who's just trying to tell you what you want to hear so you can come on board. We're going to try and scare the crap out of you because we don't want you on a roof if you don't want to be on a roof. If you can't carry a 72-pound ladder, why do this, right? Because it costs us a lot of money to bring people in. So we really want to make sure that they're going to be successful, because we just want to see somebody have a successful transition. So my recruiters aren't going to blow you up. They're not going to text you all the time. If they can't reach you after a few attempts, we're just going to move on. And because there's so many other people that we've got to help and support.
So
So
obviously, for our
yeah,
students, your information is going to be on our end of day survey. So if you want to get connected with Mark, we'll have that information. Fill that out. Let us know. We'll send that. Mark and I talk a lot. We talk often. So we'll get you connected with Mark and send him a list for his recruiters to reach back out to you to get connected and start that path. Now there is a there is a time requirement for the training,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
what is that time requirement for SkillBridge?
We've learned through experience that the minimum 90 days is the best way to start. And when I say 90 days, it's actually calendar days. It falls into 88 days. I used to do 60-day internships because of the Army, where they had a lot of restrictions at 60 days. But by the time you finished all that training and now you're running jobs independently, they only had maybe 1 week of running jobs independently, and they didn't weren't being able to learn as quickly. And so now they're like, hey man, I'm really kind of nervous about this still. I don't know if this is what I want to do. And so we realized, hey, we've got to make this training and experience be the focus. And so we moved away from the 60 days and made it 90 days. And it was a very hard decision to make. But the 90 days is the minimum. We always start pretty much the second Monday of the month. And so that can become a factor for people, is trying to line that up. But what I find is some people like, hey, look, I've got 74 days allowed for my internship based off your start date. But I have another 20 days of terminal leave afterwards. Can I just finish the internship on terminal? And I'm like, absolutely. And then you onboard and you double dip for the rest, right? Absolutely supportive of trying to make whatever happen as we can. But yeah, 90 days, but I also go up to the 180. The longer you do, the more experience you're going to get. And so when you actually activate with us, you don't have this buffer time added to you. We know that you're going to run jobs quickly, and it allows you to run more jobs. And each job you run, you're getting paid for. So you're not paid by the hour, you're paid by the inspection. And so that allows you to earn more money. And plus, our sign-on bonus is set up by per day you're in the internship program. So the more longer you're in it, the bigger your sign-on bonus is.
That's phenomenal. Hey Jay, I see your hand raised. Go ahead and ask your question, everybody.
Okay, I want to apologize. My children are in the background, if you can catch them. Um, well, if we were to onboard with Seek Now and do the internship, will we be pigeonholed if we're in specific areas that aren't near like majorly like densely populated areas? Like if we were out in the sticks somewhere, like once we actually get through the training, will we be kind of limited on what kind of work is available?
So before you even ever start your internship program with us, we're going to look at what market you plan to live in. So whatever your address is or what have you, and what's the 100-mile radius around it. And then we go to the regional field manager of that area and we say, hey, we've got somebody who wants to do an internship. They're going to be living here. Do we have enough work to support them? Because we don't want you coming on board if there's no work to support you. They give us the yay or nay, and we come back to you. We say, hey, look, yeah, but maybe you have to increase your radius to 150 miles, or yeah, we're good. Especially if like in New York City, you're not going to even have a 100-mile radius because it's so tight with traffic. So it just kind of depends. But we do all of that before you ever come on board, because I don't want a bait and switch thing. I don't want to say, hey, yeah, guaranteed an offer, and then we say, all right, but the place you're going to is not going to have any work, so have fun with that. Really want to make sure that, again, it's a successful transition. Now, if you're going to be out in the sticks, like you said, and there's no houses, then how can you be a property inspector if there's no houses, right? So you got to be somewhere where at least there's properties to inspect.
Okay, and then follow on. Are we once we become actual inspectors? Is it like we have to stab each other to get a gig?
No. So one, there's no door to door for you. There's none of that. What happens is we do all of that work. They have a portal. What happens is an adjuster says, I need an inspection done at this address. And then our system looks at everyone who's there and all the jobs that need to be done and what times. And then it creates the most optimized route. Now, that doesn't mean that you start here at 10 a.m., come here at 1 p.m. and go back here at 3 p.m. and like, why did I just do this, right? Why didn't I just do these two together? A lot of it, it's because the homeowner says, don't come until 3, right? And so it's still the most optimized route, even though you're doing this V. But yeah, our system creates the most optimized routes.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a win by itself. You don't have to do any lead generation yourself.
Nope.
You just go do your job and turn in the slip.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, AJ.
I think someone else had their hand raised. I don't know. I think Joseph, did you still have a question?
I was just gonna say I made it through the process, but I'm in an area just like you guys were discussing, so I wasn't able to go forward. So that was a good question.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. No, Mark, I appreciate your time, brother. I mean, I think what you guys are doing, one, setting up folks for success into a career field that they can become their own boss and do their own thing. And then have the ability to make those six figures, and help themselves and their family grow. I think that's amazing. And the fact the care that you guys take in to say, hey, we're not going to just bring you on to bring you on and basically give you no work to do, is a huge benefit, because that's exactly what every single one of us are looking for, right? Making that jump, make sure that we have something set up. We have a full-time career ahead of us. So that's great. If there was one last thing, obviously all our folks, most of our folks, I would say, are all in SkillBridge right now, right? They're trying to make their way into and take their first steps into, whether it be the private sector, whether it be back into government. What is one piece of advice maybe that you didn't receive as you were transitioning, or maybe you did, that you would love to pass on to these folks as they're starting their transition?
Yeah, I think I shared some of those lessons learned that I had in the beginning, doing this twice, and you may not have the opportunity. You're on your skill bridge now. You may not have the opportunity to have done tap twice, but it's absolutely listen to Lori tomorrow. And listen, I mean, Kenneth, I came in and you asked the question about 3 pages or 2 pages. People have their opinions, and every single person will have their opinions. Lori has one, and it's 2 pages, because she took me from a 3-page to a 2-page. And she explains why, 2 pages. But I would say listen to everyone, not just me, not just Lori. Listen to everyone and understand what makes sense for you. Like I said, for me, the networking didn't make sense for me because although I'm talking all of this now, I'm kind of a shy person, and I don't like going to parties and doing the small talk. I'll talk business all day, but small talk just eats me up. So it's very hard for me to network. And when everyone kept saying the only way you can get a job is networking, I was like, this advice doesn't work for me. So now, if that advice doesn't work for you, you got to find out what does. So for me, it's the resume. I got to look the best I can on paper, because if I'm not going to network in, I need to look good. And then I've got to do great at the interview, because yes, I got that interview, but now I need to go kill it, right? And learn about the STAR technique and everything else to really demonstrate the value. So yeah, if I was going to say anything, listen to everyone, because somebody's going to have some advice that fits for you. It's not about following everyone's advice. It's about following the advice that fits for you.
That's perfect. Yeah, no, that's great advice, Mark. I appreciate the insight. I appreciate you walking us through and telling your story, and then telling us more about Seek Now and the opportunity you guys have over there for an amazing career. I really do appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate it, Mark. All right, like I said, if you guys want to get connected with Mark, he's going to be on our end of day survey. So if you want to get more information from him and get connected, we'll send that list over.